Ow!
Dude, like, what are you doing? I'm searching for my purpose. Have you seen it? You're searching for your purpose? Yep. Can't find the damn thing. Been searching for 43 years. But I think I'm close. You know I might have a way you could find your purpose. Really? Yeah, why don't you just follow your soul? Ladies, gentlemen, and fellow seekers of truth, welcome to Unscripted Faith. Episode 6, The Purpose of Our Soul. The purpose of my soul. The purpose of my soul. I'm a soul man. I'm a soul man. The purpose of our soul. What the heck could it be? You know, I've thought about that a lot throughout my life. What is the purpose of our soul? And what does it help us unlock? Right? Something I've always thought about. You know, I was always, it's like faith. I was always told I have one. You know, where does it come from? Has anybody got any questions today? Yeah, where's my soul come from? God. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it comes from God. You know, it's funny the questions we ask, you know, when we're kids and stuff and how innocent they are. But the purpose of our soul. So it's always kind of been talked about, you know, your soul can do certain things for you, but what those things are always seem to be somewhat of a mystery. And through my own experience, I've kind of came up with my some of my own little theories about it. And since everybody has a right to an idea, at least I think we still do, I'm going to throw my old hat in the ring about it. See what we can come up with, you know, get a little existential on you guys. Let's get a little existential today. Let's go deep. Right? So, the purpose of our soul. I believe that when we come into existence on this earth, I believe God endows us with a soul. Right? And I believe it's His divine gift to us while we are on this journey through life, right? And it's kind of like one of those things, I don't know if you guys have ever been as bad as me in class, but you know, ever seen like, you know, when like you used to shoot spitballs at like the chalkboard? You know, that really isn't just in movies, like, you know, or spitball wads on the bus. We used to do that all the time. You get in these fights on the bus and it's like, right? But I believe when we're born, God takes out a straw, puts our soul in it and goes, right? Gives us a soul, and that's His gift to us. Now, within that soul are a bunch of cool things. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right? Because God's like, dude, I'm not going to send you to earth and give you nothing, right? I'm not going to give you the car without any gas in it. I'm going to throw your dog a bone here. I'm going to help you guys out. I'm not going to make it easy for you. But within your soul is going to lie the greatest of things you could ever accomplish and experience in this lifetime. Right? Now, I believe our soul is connected to God. It's kind of like the kid on a leash. You ever seen that back in the day? I don't think they do that anymore. But I remember my cousin used to be a kid on a leash all the time. Anytime we went to like an amusement park or something, he had a leash and his mom had a leash. Remember those little like dangly cords? I don't know if you guys can remember that. I think these are probably outlawed by now, but it's hilarious. You know, he'd be running around. He's got the leash, you know, dragging my aunt's arm all over the place. But I believe our soul is our tether to God, to the infinite, to the ethereal, right? It's almost like God gives us a piece of his divine energy and instills it into us when we're born, right? He just goes, I'm going to give you a little bit of me in you. And I believe our soul is a little piece of God that he gives with us during our human experience. I know it sounds crazy and it sounds nuts, right? But hear me out on it. And that soul that we have, and everybody gets one. Everybody gets one. Unless you're a dog. I still think dogs get souls. I don't care what my grandma says. You know how much heated argument or how many arguments I've gotten into about that? It's like I see in the movie, all dogs go to heaven, right? But anyway, God gives us our soul, and that's his gift to us. And how we use our soul and whether we can listen to it or not is the game that we're thrown into, right? So how do we listen to our souls, right? What do we have to do? What's locked away in it, right? We're always searching for things, and what are we searching for, right? But I believe that within our soul is our conscience, right? Now, some people say our conscience is the voice of God speaking to you. So I believe our conscience is in our soul. I believe our higher self is within our soul. The best version of ourselves possible. Yeah, that's in our soul, right? Our divine talents and gifts are in our soul. And our divine purpose, if you want to use the word purpose, is in our soul. And I think if you follow your soul, or the more you follow it, the more you get to reveal these things, right? It's almost like they're locked away in this vault, right? God's like, dude, I'm going to give you all this stuff and I'm going to lock it away in this vault, right? Your higher self's in there, your divine gifts, your divine talents, all these cool, awesome things about you and what you can do is in this vault, but you have to find the combination, right? And the only thing that can give you the combination to open the vault is your faith. And the more you start following your faith and leaning on your faith to follow your soul, then you're going to start to be getting these little pieces of the combination that hopefully the goal is one day that we get to all open, right? And discover these things for ourselves. You know what I mean? I can't imagine what would or could make God smile more than seeing one of his own creations self-actualize, if you want to use that term, and reach their highest potential. You know, I mean, if I was God, not to say I was, and I don't want to go down that road, I don't want to do it. But it's like, man, what can make him smile more when he looks down on your life and goes, wow, look at this guy. He figured it out. Like, God knows your potential. He knows what you can and can't do. But he's not going to make it easy for you, because if he made it easy for you, it'd be boring. You wouldn't discover anything. You wouldn't learn anything. Right? So he kind of gives you faith and he gives you your soul, and you got to go out and you got to start figuring out how to make the two work. Right? And in my own experience, in my own life experience, I've noticed that a lot of the big decisions I make, and when I look into my faith to make them, I've started uncovering little pieces of the combination for myself. Right? So in a sense, the more leaps of faith we take, and the more willing to go into the unknown, right? And I'm not saying unknown like, just go wander the desert or something stupid like that. I'm talking about the unknown within ourselves, what we can and can't do, what we're capable of, right? Listening to that little voice, our intuition, right? The things that we know in our hearts, like those some of those ideas we got where we go, man, maybe I should try that. Maybe I don't know, whatever. But I think our soul is responsible for a lot of that stuff. The only problem is we're never really taught how to follow our soul. Because how do you follow your soul? I mean, you you stand up in church and you go, hey, I'm trying to follow my soul. I'm going to leave for a while. I'll see you guys later. Everyone's going to go, that's not your soul. That's the devil. You're possessed, dude. You're possessed, right? Or people look at you funny and go, man, this guy's listening to a little voice in his head. He's nuts. And I think following our soul is meant to be something done in private. And nobody is ever going to understand, right, what your purpose is, or what you're being called to do, or where maybe you're being led. Nobody will ever understand it. Only you can understand it, and only you can understand it between you and God, right? And your soul is the thing that attaches you to that and gives your conscience the power to know when you're doing the right thing or the wrong thing. And it's tough. It's a tough thing to do. But I ask myself, I go, man, what can make God smile more than seeing one of his creations reach their most, ultimate potential? And when we think about that, or when I think about that, I also tend to think about, what's going to happen, like when I die. I know it's freaky, right? I think about it all the time. And I believe our soul carries us through this life journey. And then at the end of it, ideally, I think God wants it to return to the same place it comes from, right? Our soul comes from God. He instills that within us. And that same energy passes through our life, through our physical bodies, but we get to carry it, right? And then eventually he wants it to return to him. Okay? And I think that's where the concept of heaven and hell come in. Right? And the ironic thing about that is that we have the free will to decide for ourselves whether we want our soul to return to God or not. And it's through our free will and our choices and our decisions that either allow that to happen or not, or gives God something to look at us back at and go, I don't know if I need you back right now, sort of a deal. I know that sounds harsh, but I've always thought about that, right? Where does the energy go once it passes through this life experience we have? And ultimately, I want that energy to return back to God, but it can only return back to God depending on how I use my free will on earth and the choices I make, right? Because every choice I make is either going to bring me closer to him or take me away or keep me stuck in the middle. And a lot of these choices we have to make, I think, can only be made by our own self, trusting our own soul and trusting our own intuition and having faith in God that we are doing the right thing in our hearts and in our souls to make him smile. But making him smile might mean freaking the hell out of these people. You get where I'm going with that? In order to make God smile by you following your soul, you might be stirring the pot over here. A lot of people are going to look at you weird, right? And the funny thing is, I think the people that look at you weird for trying to follow your soul, I think are the ones that have that voice, but have always been too terrified to listen to it and to do something about it, right? They try to put the earplugs in, you know what I mean? They don't want to hear it, so they just keep going on with their life, trying to just go through the motions, just block the noise out. Or they're convinced that maybe it's the devil or something trying to get a hold of them, And I've kind of noticed that, the more leaps of faith I take and the more places I want to go and the more I believe I'm trying to follow my soul, the more freaked out everybody gets. It's not in a bad way. It's in a caring way. As a father, I want my kids to get to heaven. I want my friends to get to heaven. I want you to get to heaven. But I think there's also some things that you need to do that nobody else can tell you to do. And only you can figure that out for yourself, right? And that's where your faith comes in. And that's where your conscience comes in. You know, people say, or I've heard it termed that your conscience is the voice of God speaking to you. Like literally. So, I mean, if your conscience is in your soul and it's kind of all intertwined, that makes sense to me that, you know, that little voice that says, maybe I shouldn't be doing that. Maybe I should do this instead. That's maybe like God saying, like, dude, duh. Like, wake the up, you know? And we just try to ignore it, or we shut it off, or we just avoid it, right? And when I started thinking about that, like when it came to following my own soul, it's like, how did I know that, like, how do you know how to follow your soul? Like, how do you know? Do you just know? You know? And I think it's one of those things where you always have to, like, measure it. So if our soul comes from God, and it's God's divine gift to us as humans to help guide us as our moral, ethical, navigational beacon, right, that charts the waters for us so we could eventually return back to Him, because that's what He wants. At least I think that's what He wants. I don't know what God wants, but kind of speculating there. But I think, you know, the energy probably wants to return to the place it came from. You know, how do you know with what you're doing is good or bad? Because I faced these, like, decisions in my own life. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to make another video about this, but I'm going to tell you something. Like, when I married my wife, she was like, she's Buddhist from Cambodia, right? And that was a decision I made in my life where I asked myself, I go, you know what? And it's a good story. I'm going to make a separate video about that, but this is just one example. So it's like, you know, I'm sitting there and I'm like, you know what? I think God, like, I feel like God put this girl into my life for a reason. I just do. Like, I just know it. Like, my soul knows it, right? And it didn't matter that she wasn't Catholic. It didn't matter. I mean, she knows Jesus. She reads the Bible and stuff. But, like, none of that stuff mattered, because if I believed that God put her into my life, then I had no choice but to take a leap of faith on that and attach my faith to God that this is something that was, I don't want to say meant to be, but something that the stars aligned for, right? But I couldn't have made that decision unless I had my soul to kind of guide me through that, and I had the faith to back it up, right? And how I knew it was true, and how I've kind of figured out, if you even want to call it figuring it out, but I've come up with this rationalization, right? I think God is the epitome of selfless, unconditional love, right? I think Jesus points to it where, you know, selfless, unconditional love, that's like the defining characteristic of God, in a sense. Now, within that are infinite intelligence, infinite power, all that stuff. And I totally get it. But I think the closest thing we can experience on earth that is closest to God is selfless, unconditional love. And that's a hard thing to experience, right? But we try to love more. We try to be loving, you know, love your neighbor as thyself sort of a deal. Love your enemies, right? It's all about love. So I think if any decision you make, right, is rooted in selfless, unconditional love, and your intent is rooted out of love, and if you use that as the backbone, then I think you know that your soul is not leading you astray, right? And your faith is not leading you astray. You know, but you might have to break a few rules. And the rules you're breaking, I don't think are the real rules. They're just kind of like the some of the fake ones. I don't want to say that, but they're just kind of fake. They're just like, you know, some rules that matter but don't really matter. You know, I'm not talking like, you know, Ten Commandments. Those are great. Those are awesome. You need to follow those, right? That is just like a great moral and ethical code. You know, like love your neighbor, treat others the way you want to be treated. You need to follow that. Like that's great stuff. You cannot, like that's not a rule you want to break. But like questioning yourself on marrying a girl that you believe God somehow found a way to bring her into your life, you're going to be breaking some rules in order to make that happen, right? If you want to start your own business or you have this idea to do this thing, you're probably going to have to break a few rules in order to do it. And a lot of the rules are the rules that are actually holding you back from discovering who you are, right? We're not talking about like moral and ethical rules here. You know what I mean? Like Robin and Stan. We're not getting into that. We're talking about the self-limiting beliefs that find a way into our psyche through conditioning and being conditioned on what we should think instead of how to think, right? And I think our faith is there to kind of guide us through those waters. But it's like, you know, I look at that perfect example from my life. I'm like, how the hell am I going to pull this off? It's like, you know what? Am I going to be scared to marry this girl? I mean, she believes in God. Even though she's Buddhist, she believes in God. I believe in God. So it's like, if the big man, because I believe in divine intervention, if this is, my gut tells me this is kind of divine intervention, then my test is going to be to see if I have the faith to pull it off or not. And then, do I have the faith to trust God above all else when everybody is going to be scared shitless that I'm doing this? Everybody's going to be scared shitless, right? They're going to freak out. She's not Catholic. What are you going to raise her kids? You know, all the questions coming through, right? They're going to freak out. And I understand that because it's not normal. But then there's something over here where it's like, I have to believe that this is happening for a greater purpose. And this makes this harder, right? But when we get judged by God, we get judged on the hard things. Like, dude, did you really listen? It's like a game to him. Like, I feel like it's a game. Like, you know, when I die, he's going to come up there and he's going to look at me. He's going to go, yeah, we got a lot to talk about. You know, we got a lot to talk about. You know all those nights when you were in your bed screaming at me, telling me like, God, give me a purpose. Give me a purpose. Give me a talent. Give me something. Do you realize I answered every single one of those prayers for you, but you never had the faith to take the clues, right? I can't make it easy for you. I just can't send you down to earth and have you know everything. Right? That's not the point. The point is for you to learn, to go out, to explore, to discover. And I think it's one of those things where, unfortunately, it's very taboo to kind of figure it out, right? Because it's like the moment you say it, people think you're nuts, right? It's like, dude, this guy's a wacko, like following his soul, and it wants to like take him to all these places, right? And it's just like, it's one of those things you just got to trust your gut. That's why you got it, man. That's why you got your soul. That's why you got your heart and soul. And like I said before, following it, I think, is the hardest test we're given on earth. You know? It's like, dude, and I feel like that's what I'm going to be judged on when I die. What did I have the faith to kind of go where I was being called? And it's weird when you think about that, you know? But then I understand it because, you know, anybody who's ever done something different in this world has been able to do it out of faith, right? They listened to that voice and they had that faith to do it. And I made that decision for myself that that's a life that I wanted. You know, so how do we wrap this up? I know I'm probably like, you guys are like, dude, come on, man, let's just cut it. Let's just cut it. You know, how do we wrap this up? And I think the point I'm really trying to make here is that only you can find the combination. Now, you have some tools to help you, right? get some wisdom. A lot of very influential people have written books on wisdom, truth, all this, right? You have the tools, but you got to find the combination. Nobody can give it to you. You know, you have to find it for yourself. And in order to do that, you're going to have to, I think, go some places that are going to make you uncomfortable. And you're going to have to make these really hard decisions in your life. Like, man, am I nuts, or is this voice telling me something? Is my soul telling me I should maybe do this or do that or try that? You know, how do you know if you can paint unless you pick up the paints? Right? How do you know if you can write unless you actually try to write? You know what I mean? So I think it's kind of one of those things where, you know, our soul helps us lead us to that. And the more we can follow our souls, and the more we have the faith to follow our souls, the more we begin to discover these awesome things about us. Only the things God knows that are instilled in us, our potentials and all that stuff. But like I said, it's not going to be easy. And people are going to look at you like you're crazy. But, you know, you just got to trust this. Only you can find that combination. Well, anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. And girls, there's a few girls out there watching. Sorry, but I'm married. Just joking. Just joking. But anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you got something out of this. You know, maybe a thing or two. Maybe I helped open your eyes to a way that maybe you never thought of it before. But anyway, yeah. Good stuff. I'll catch you next time. And remember, keep the faith.